Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. A little bit later, we'll spend a few minutes with WKYT's new sports director, who's already a familiar face to our regular viewers. Lee K. Howard will join us in a few minutes. We'll get some insight on the sports landscape out there. A few changes, including in high school sports. But first, the race to succeed Kentucky's longest-serving senator ever, Mitch McConnell, continues to get more crowded in both major parties. There are three Republicans in the running, aggressive primary there, and this week two more Democratic candidates jumped into the primary that already included State House Minority Leader Pamela Stephenson. Now joining the race are former CIA member Joel Willett and today's first guest, former U.S. Secret Service agent Logan Forsythe. The 36-year-old Forsythe says his experiences growing up, his federal service, and his time as an attorney have all shaped him. This week, Forsythe said a question from his son gave him the nudge into politics. Mr. Forsythe, welcome. We appreciate you coming in.
Oh, thank you for having me, Bill.
You said you grew up in Western Kentucky in poverty before going to college and law school, eventually joining the Secret Service. Tell us your background.
Yes, sir. So we grew up in Lyon County, which is far Western Kentucky. As you said, we were in poverty. There were four children. I'm the youngest of four, single mother household. We weren't in poverty because she wasn't working. And I want to make that clear. I want everyone to know that she was the hardest working person I've ever known. I look up to her greatly for everything she did, because without her, what little we did have, we wouldn't have. She always worked at least two jobs, sometimes three. And despite that, it was never enough. You know, we always had at least one utility cut off every month. We relied on Medicaid. We relied on food stamps. And it took all of us, even the young children, working at sometimes to try to help, make the ends meet, make the bills. And just based on the circumstances, based on the environment, we couldn't seem to overcome that in my childhood.
Did that growing up, did those experiences shape, you think, your political stands now?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if it's necessarily the political stance that was shaped, but growing up in that environment, we had, like I said, we had Medicaid, we had food stamps that is largely, controlled by political movements, by who's running for office, who's voting for what. But more than that, and, much more dear to me, it was our neighbors, our family, our friends who stepped up and helped us as well. So I think my circumstances growing up how I did, seeing that when you're in your bad times, people will step up, they'll help you, that's the right thing to do, that's what you should do. That shaped who I am and how I've lived my life, and that's what I'm going to take into, being the next senator.
You said in your launch video that a question from your son prompted you to take the step of becoming a candidate.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so my son, Maddox, he's 13 years old, way too smart for his own good. I guess he gets it from his mother, but he listens to us. My wife and I, we talk. We like to discuss what's happening in the world, and he's very inquisitive. He takes it all in, a little too much probably. And after we were talking about certain things that were going on that we didn't agree with earlier this year, he had his iPad. He found a story about a law firm that was bringing a lawsuit to stop some of the actions of our government right now that they didn't agree with. And my son just came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, is this you? Is this your firm?" Because he knows I'm an attorney and I'm practicing law, and that's it. So I had to explain to him that, like a doctor, attorneys do different things, and that wasn't us. And he said, "But you don't agree with what's happening, right?" And I said, "Yeah, you're right, I don't." He's like, "And you are an attorney." And I said, "Yeah, you're right." And in his head, there was no good reason for me to not do what I thought was right and what should happen, because he still, from a very early age when I was in the Secret Service, he would go to school and tell his friends that his dad was a superhero. So in his eyes, I was still the guy that would jump in front of a bullet if I had to, that I would always do what's right and stand up for what's right and helping other people. And there was no good reason I could tell him as to why I wasn't the attorney doing that or why I wasn't trying to do something.
You've said that you have concerns about the new budget bill and its potential impact on Kentucky.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I think anyone who understands what's going to happen when this budget bill goes into effect should have the same concerns. They should share that. Not only for my story, we relied on Medicaid. I was born with a foot condition that I had to wear what is affectionately be termed like Forrest Gump leg braces, but they were plastic, not metal. Still not fun to wear, but Medicaid paid for that. Without that, I would not have been able to walk. probably. So Medicaid kept me healthy enough to where I was able to eventually grow up and serve my country. These programs that are being cut also kept us fed. You know, we were on food stamps. Now it's more generally referred to SNAP. And I think a lot of people don't understand because they have a notion that it's a nutrition assistance program. And assistance a lot of the time sounds like, hey, it's just a little bit of help because you're not quite getting where you need to be. There were times, despite every effort of my mother and everyone else working, there were times that all the food in the house came from that program. So it wasn't just assistance for us, and it's not just assistance for a lot of people now. And 50% of our kids here in Kentucky still rely on these programs. And we're doing away with them, and I think that that's wrong.
What do you say to those who say they were trying to protect those programs by eliminating waste and by only delivering the services to those who truly need them?
Yeah, well, I would ask them to point to the waste that they're eliminating. Let's shine lights on that. I think everyone will agree that any program that has waste, that should be investigated and that should be stopped. I'm not going to argue against eliminating waste as well, but these broad sweeping cuts, they're not just eliminating waste. They are cutting people off of life-saving measures that they need just for their health and for food. It's not everyone who's going to be cut off is wasteful or abusing the system.
Do you feel President Trump's tariff strategy is paying some benefits with some companies moving manufacturing back to the United States? We've had in Kentucky the Apple announcement that Corning Glass will bring more of its operations to Harrodsburg, that's the glass for the iPhones. Or do you believe they create too much uncertainty?
I think it's too much uncertainty. And, with Apple in particular, I believe most of the glass was already made here in America, right? And we do have more jobs being created in Kentucky with that, which is fantastic. But I don't think that that's a direct result of these tariffs. The glass was, for the most part, already being made by Corning here in America. What we're actually seeing is, mass layoffs in our bourbon industry. We have a large Toyota plant up the road, and, they rely on parts and materials that they have to import. So I'm not for any program, even a tariff, that is going to jeopardize the good Kentucky jobs that we have. And I think that we run the risk with these tariffs and the uncertainties of it, of more Kentuckians actually losing their livelihoods than us receiving any benefits from the money we might bring in from them.
Senator McConnell has noted that given his seniority, that he has been able, as he said, to make Kentucky punch above its weight, and that is get more benefits than maybe a state of our size would. Could a freshman incoming Democrat potentially, in fact, looking at polling now, likely a member of the minority party, do that much for Kentucky?
Well, I believe we could, and I believe going in there with the right mindset of my focus is on the people of Kentucky, not one particular party. And I'm willing to reach across the aisle, work with everyone to ensure that the interests of everyday Kentuckians are put forward. And, there are big programs that Mitch McConnell over his time, he did bring into Kentucky. He did bring some funding in that we otherwise might not have had. But what I tell people, and the reason why I'm running, why I'm so frustrated right now, why someone like me who in the Secret Service, when I was around politicians, I didn't really like them too much. So I don't necessarily, I never saw myself trying to go work with them in this capacity. But I'm doing it because despite the fact that, we had one of the longest serving senators and the most powerful of all time, 30 something years ago when my mom was working 2 to 3 jobs and couldn't make ends meet, to today, it hasn't gotten better. We haven't punched above our weight in terms of everyday Kentuckians' lives improving. If anything, it's gotten worse. Everything's more expensive. The minimum wage has barely gone up in that time, and people are still working multiple jobs, multiple full-time jobs, and they can't pay basic bills. And I don't think that that's a track record to be proud of.
Can you win this Democratic primary, and can a Democrat win statewide in a U.S. Senate race, something that has not been done since 1992? I guess you would have been about 3 years old at that time.
4, yeah.
Yeah. This hasn't happened since Wendell Ford, his last victory in Kentucky. Can Democrats win next year?
Well, I haven't run yet, so that's why it hasn't happened. No, but I believe we can. If I didn't think we could, then I wouldn't be doing this. I believe now more than ever, people in Kentucky and actually America as a whole They're tired of having people represent them that truly don't represent them. So people who don't understand what it is to grow up in the rural parts of the states or even live amongst the everyday working people in our more urban areas. People who are so detached from reality that when this budget bill goes into effect, it's not going to affect them at all or anybody they care about. That's why they're able to push this forward and support it. You know, I believe people will see the story, see the campaign, understand that my only desire and drive is to help Kentuckians and to ensure that those who come after me have the same opportunities I had to better myself. And I think that message is going to resonate, and I think that we do have a good chance of winning this.
How do you plan to get your message out in the weeks and months ahead?
Well, I'm talking to you right now, which is great. So I'm going to go to as many appearances as I can. We're going all across the state. I'm going to go to as many county events as possible that the Democratic parties or even the Republican parties, if they invite me to come over there to talk, I'll happily do it. I want to get out, meet everyday Kentuckians, shake their hand, talk to them, find out what their issues are that they're facing, what interests they have in a campaign like mine putting forward, and we're just going to listen to them and we're going to reflect what we hear.
Do you say, we're a very divided country right now, obviously. Yeah. Do you think there's a way to bring folks together?
I think so. I think instead of focusing on all of the negativity, which we have to point out things that are wrong, obviously, but we need to focus on our common grounds, the fact that, these issues transcend parties. We shouldn't first be trying to label somebody, Democrat, Republican, blue or red. Instead, we're Kentuckians, we're Americans. They're our neighbors, they're our family. A lot of the times we don't agree with our family, but we have to come together at the end of the day. We have to ensure that this campaign, this party, everything going forward focuses first and foremost on the people of Kentucky.
Logan Forsythe, thanks for coming. We appreciate it. He's a Democratic candidate for the U.S. Senate. There are others. We'll be talking to them along the way, and we've been talking to the Republican candidates as well, as our early campaign 2026 coverage is already really underway. Hope you'll stay with us on Kentucky Newsmakers. WKYT Sports Director Lee K. Howard will talk about his new position and some of the sports happenings out there. Stay with us. We're coming right back. Good morning once again, and welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers from WKYT. Lee K. Howard was recently named the sports director at WKYT. He follows in the footsteps of Bryant and, of course, the legendary Rob Bromley, among others. Lee K. is already familiar to viewers in our region, and WKYT made the decision to promote from within. We'll talk about his love for sports and broadcasting, new rules in high school basketball, and how the Wildcats are likely to do the rest of this football season and in the basketball seasons to come for men and women. Plus, what a market with the EKU, Morehead State, KSU, Georgetown College, other storied programs and high school programs in our area. Lee K., welcome and congratulations. And it's nice to have a moment to talk to you. Yeah. When did you know you wanted to do sports?
I knew from a very young age, Bill, that I was always inclined to want to be around sports. And obviously as a young child, it was playing sports, and that continued on through high school. I think it was, though, about my senior year of high school when I realized that the scholarships weren't going to come to play sports, and I better figure out this academic side of things and what I wanted to pursue. And that's when I kind of figured out that, hey, there's a sports broadcasting route that maybe would allow me to still be around sports and the things that I love, but in a different aspect. And so that's kind of where that decision
reality sets in. Huh?
That's right. Yeah, reality sets in, and I can't quite dunk a ball or run a 4.340. And so at this point, I've got to figure out how can I talk about sports rather than actually play the sports.
But it is fun to cover those who do have those tremendous abilities, right? And often are so humbled and disciplined, when you're covering those athletes.
And I've done this. This is my 20th year covering sports now. 6 of those years were in Texas, last 14 here at WKYT in Lexington. And you're right, it is so neat to see the dedication that these men and women, boys and girls on the high school level put in to hone their craft. And, Kentucky, of course, is a very rich market for these kind of sports. University of Kentucky obviously is what most people think about when they think about the sports here in this state. But there's a lot of others, so it's really neat to watch these athletes.
You came to WKYT, as you said, in 2011, not long after a certain other WKYT anchor made her way here, right?
That's right, Kristen Kennedy, who is our morning anchor here. Right. We actually met at a TV station in Lubbock, Texas, and she got the job here a year before I did, a little bit more than a year before I did in 2010. And my goal was always to follow her, honestly, and it worked out. I think a lot of people thought that we met here in Kentucky. We actually knew each other and then got engaged pretty soon after we moved here to Lexington. And it's been great. We work weird schedules, as you know. You used to work that morning show schedule. Yeah. She's in very, very early. For the last 14 years, have been working late nights. So but it works out for us.
Well, and she's from South Carolina originally,
right.
But both of you've been here so long, and you had your kids are both from here, right?
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Is like. You know how TV contracts work. Most people come into a TV station with the mindset of, I'm going to be there for 2 to 3 years, and then I'm going to figure out what's next. And I think we probably honestly came in with that same mindset. And there's something to be said about finding a place that you love. And we kind of fell in love with this market, with the station, with the state. And then we had a couple of kids, and then it becomes like, okay, now we've got 2 Kentucky-born kids, and maybe we ought to stay here and plant roots. And it probably took 10 years before my family quit asking, are you guys going to stay in Lexington? And now they don't ask.
Well, I understand that. I've been at the station 41 years this month, so, and WKYT does have this culture of promoting from within. As I said, I'm a product of that. Chris Bailey, sitting over here, was an intern who's our chief meteorologist now for many, many years. And even our general manager came right out of college here to WKYT and has climbed through the ranks. So that is also special.
Yeah, and it really helps, I think, in our product, not only in the sports department, but across all of the departments here at WKYT, because having those familiar faces, I think, is a big thing for the viewers, for the coverage, for the content, just being familiar with it. When I was hired here, like you said earlier, I was the weekend anchor with Rob Bromley, who had a wealth of knowledge in this market, 40 years as the sports anchor here. And then Brian Milam arrived here a year before I did. So we worked together for 14 years. So that has been invaluable, working along those guys, along with those guys. So now, to be able to be promoted to the sports director now was something that I always kind of wanted to do, and I'm looking forward to it.
Still have Dave Baker in the mix for that institutional knowledge,
That's right.
All right. There's a new rule in high school basketball coming. How will the shot clock change things?
Yeah, that's big because 31 states, including Washington, D.C., already have some sort of shot clock in high school basketball. So Kentucky's not last to the party, but they're not first. Still 3 years away, but the KHSAA this week voted that for boys and girls high school varsity basketball, not the JV, just the varsity, there's going to be a 35-second shot clock. And I think it's a big positive. Now, there are negatives. Obviously, there's a cost involved. Schools, I think, are going to be in charge of figuring out how to raise those funds. I think it's probably between $2,500 to $5,000 per set of shot clocks. And you've got to think, if you've got 2 gyms, you might need one for both gyms. So that's something that they're going to have to figure out. But I think as far as the game is concerned, it's going to better prepare these athletes for the college game, where there's a 30-second shot clock. And you've got to play up to a certain tempo, and you can't just play 4 corners and stall the ball.
The old stall game, which used to be a big thing. Really, people, if you could get ahead 5 points, then just stall the rest of the day.
Yeah, and I've showed up to plenty of games where there's six minutes left in the game, and a team has a 4-point lead, and they're just trying to dribble the air out of the ball and maintain that 4-point lead, and it's almost mind-numbing. So this will allow them to actually play a more competitive game. I think it's going to make the games more more competitive because even if you're a superior team or an inferior team, you've got the same amount of time to get a shot off.
Yeah.
And so I think it actually will help the game.
Yeah, kind of force the tempo.
That's right.
A little bit. All right, what are your best hopes for the Kentucky football season?
You know, that's a tough one because this team, I think, is much better than last year's team as far as the personnel that they've put on the field. From the offensive line to the defensive line. You know, we saw what Cutter Boley can do at quarterback against Eastern Michigan. I think they have a stable of running backs that are as good as what they've had the last couple of years. But it's tough to equate that to wins and losses just because the SEC schedule is so difficult. Yeah. If they could get to 6 wins with this schedule that they have, I think it would be a wildly successful season. Now, depending on which Kentucky fan you talk to, that would be a success. Others would say that's terrible to only win 6 games. But when you consider the opponents in the SEC, I think the main thing that Stoops has to do is try to get this team back to a bowl game after missing last year.
Yeah. All right, basketball season is coming. People are excited. We know we now have some details about Big Blue Madness, right? We have the time and date.
Yeah, we do. For the first time that I can remember, it's going to be on a Saturday, and it comes on the second bye week for the Kentucky football team. It's a free Saturday. I believe that's October the 17th, and they're going to do it there in Rupp Arena, and it should be a fun spectacle to watch. I think, honestly, that the attendance will be better on a Saturday than a Friday night. Of course, when you have it on a Friday night, you're competing with high school football.
Well, I don't know how the attendance could be much better, but
I'm saying, I mean, but like, yeah, exactly.
But the interest,
the interest and everything else. But yeah, I think it'll be fun to see on a Saturday.
Yeah. But the time to enjoy it. We'll
That's
put it
right.
that way. Can the men be national contenders this year?
I think so. I really think so. I mean, some of these preseason polls have started to leak out, and most all of them have Kentucky somewhere in the top 10. I think one thing that's different about this year as opposed to the last couple years is I don't think there is a dominant number 1 team in the country that is almost a for sure Final Four pick. So I think many of the teams in the top 10, including Kentucky, have a chance, and including Louisville, have a chance to make their way into the spot for the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah. Women's team also should be good to watch this year.
They should. You know, Kenny Brooks has that team rolling. Last year was his first year as well, just like Mark Pope, and they suffered a few preseason injuries that I think if they would have had those 2 players that they lost for the season before it ever started, they would have been a very good team. Now, they lost Georgia Amore from this last year's team. She went on to the WNBA. But they replace her with probably a more talented roster from top to bottom. So I think the expectations for the women's team is a real run in March as well.
All right, then you need to keep an eye on EKU. They could surprise folks in football and basketball this year coming up.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, we always want to talk about EKU and Morehead State and Georgetown College and Transylvania on the basketball court. And, you know, EKU always has a chance to do big things. Walt Wells, that's a tough conference that they're in, the United Athletic Conference. Once they get into basketball, they've had some really good success on the basketball court. Just redid some of that Baptist Health Arena this past year. It looks very nice. And so we're not quite ready for basketball yet.
Right.
We're still in the meat of this football schedule, but it is right around the corner.
And then another thing, Keeneland. I mean,
yes.
You know, here we are in Lexington, KY. This is a horse racing country, and that is another exciting part of sports that you get to cover.
Yeah, and for people from outside of Kentucky, which I run into a lot when I'm back home visiting family or friends and things like that, and I talked about, they think of UK sports, specifically UK basketball, when they think of this state. But the other thing is horse racing, and horse racing is so prominent in this state. And October and April, I mean, we're talking Keeneland, and so that's always an exciting time when Keeneland. When the ponies are running on the track.
Yeah. And I know then you like to just spot that other story that may be out there that is maybe not about the bouncing ball or the running horse, but maybe a triumph or a different kind of story.
You know, that's kind of the fun thing about this job. We talk a lot about scores and you know, outcomes and highlights, and that does take up the majority of what we do. But when you can find a special story of maybe it's a child, maybe it's a athlete in high school or college, or even an adult that has overcome something, or just really defied the odds. It's really a neat thing to be able to tell those kind of stories.
Yeah. Lee K, what is your pledge to viewers as you take this position? We know you will be anchoring the early evenings. We'll see you some late at night, I'm sure, when the schedule gets jumbled some, but you have a great staff working with you now.
We do. Yeah, Lindsay Goff is in there with me right now, and we'll have a full staff here eventually. And, my thing is to, one, continue on the tradition that Rob Bromley and Brian Milam and some of those before them even have set. Denny Treese, yes. I don't think there's anything that needs to be overhauled. I think we do a lot of really good things at WKYT Sports, but I also think as we move into this new era of sports and new era of newscast, there are certain things that we can do to enhance our product, and I think we'll certainly be in tune to those.
Streaming opportunities. We have a program we do that runs in the evenings now, right?
Yeah. Game Time Unplugged every night at 7:15, streaming on WKYT Plus.
All right. Lee K, good luck to you, and appreciate you, and congratulations. And as I've told everybody, you're certainly pleasant to work with.
Thank you, Bill.
Everybody, we'll wrap up Kentucky Newsmakers in a moment. We so appreciate you joining us for this edition of Kentucky Newsmakers. We're trying to get next week's program together already. We know that we'll talk some tourism with Mary Quinn Raymer from Visit Lex, one of our guests. We remind you that you can stay right up to date on air and online with WKYT News. We appreciate you being here for Kentucky Newsmakers. And as we head into fall, let's make it a good week ahead.